I'm Max Sterling. Welcome to LarpCasm. So, you just started going to a post-apocalyptic LARP, and you think to yourself, wow, I really wish I had a really good-looking cup to drink out of while I was here. Well, guess what? That's what we're going to make today. A very nice post-apocalyptic, genre-specific cup for you. And all you're going to need is a soup can, some caution tape, if you have access to it, or if not, you can get some of that duct tape with the caution lines on it. Or you can skip that step altogether. You need a couple of screws, an old doorknob, piece of leather, carabiner, whatever you can find to make a handle, and we're going to go ahead and make ourselves a cup. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you're going to go the caution tape route like I am, you're going to go ahead and make sure you cut it so that it clearly displays the words that you want it to say, and then we're going to test fit it just to sort of see how it's going to look. So this one says keep out, but I really want this caution mark here. So this overlaps a little bit and you can see the bleed through, so I'm going to cut this down so that that doesn't happen, and then go ahead and get this attached to the can. Alright, so once you have your adhesive on there, you're just going to make sure that you get it all nice and put down. Now this may not go on there exactly perfect, but that's okay. It's not supposed to be perfect. That's the beauty part about post-apocalyptic genre stuff. It's not supposed to look great, okay? It's going to be a work of art, but it's a chaotic work of art. So things that are screwed up on it add to the flavor. It's good. So don't get hung up on your stuff needing to be perfect, okay? And trust me, if you're using spray glue like I am, you're not going to get this on there perfect. But you do want to make sure that all the edges are as down as you can get them. So that's what we end up with. Now, the duct tape angle is probably going to be a heck of a lot easier than trying to use adhesive on stuff like this. The thing is, though, duct tape's like $5. This crap was like a quarter after Halloween, and 2 spurts of my Super 77 is probably about a nickel. So we're talking like 30 cents, whatever was in this can. Probably apples or potatoes. It was probably like 50 cents. So far we're into this project for about 80 cents. So that's where we're at so far. Now on to the next step. All right, now you may remember that one super rusty can from my Wasteland pirate radio station video, because that's the one I actually used to put the rust stain on it. But once you have your keep out or whatever you're going to do to it on here, you'll go ahead and get it ready to spray. So if you wanted to do anything else to this can, right now is the time to do it. So if you want to rough this up a little bit with sandpaper or something so that some rust can show through, this is the time to go ahead and do that. I'm actually going to take some sandpaper and rough this up just a little bit before I start spraying it down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now and then show you what the final product looks like before we start spraying it. And of course, I've pre-prepped this can by degreasing it as well. Okay, so I went ahead and roughed it up just a little bit so you can see the effect. Now obviously this plastic isn't going to rust on here, but it will certainly run down over it and cause the effect to look good. So as you can see, we can do this with varying degrees of rust. We can go from a little bit to holy crap, that's a tetanus shot waiting to happen. Basically, you may remember this can from my Wasteland pirate radio station video I made. That's the one I actually used to stain the top of the radio. But basically, you're going to make a simple concoction that's a combination of white vinegar and hydrogen peroxide and salt. It's a 1:8 ratio, so that means if you use 8 ounces of hydrogen peroxide, you're going to use 1 ounce of white vinegar and a little bit of salt, probably about a 1/4 teaspoon or teaspoon. Really, you can sort of experiment a little bit, but just make sure you get some salt in there along with the mixture. And you're going to put it in a spray bottle and then just basically spray it on the can. Now you're going to want to try to find a sunny day to do this, or at least someplace that's hot, because that heat is going to speed up the reaction for you. So before you get into that, though, you should degrease whatever the surface is, and you can do this on anything. It doesn't have to be cans, but make sure you degrease the surface. Use some simple green or another degreaser that you like. Make sure that it's nice and clean, and then go ahead and dry it off and start spraying away. Just let it sit on there and do its thing. So let's go ahead and start spraying this with our concoction here. And really, it's just that simple. Turn it around. Make sure you get coverage on all sides of it. And like I said, try to get out in the sun if you're able to, or if not, make sure you get some heat on it somehow. And just let it do its thing. Now, this takes time. This is something you need patience for. Let it sit for a couple hours, let it sit overnight. Try to avoid getting stuff inside if you can, but if you can't, it's not really that big of a deal. Generally speaking, I would try to do this with it actually upside down. However, you can do whatever you want. So that's sprayed. Now it's a waiting game, and then basically you're just gonna have to hit it up as many times as you want till you get the rust looking whatever desired level you want it to be at. Okay, now as far as handles, this is where you can get creative. Now, I found this awesome handle at a store, so I'm going to make sure that I use this handle for my mug. However, it could be as simple as just drilling a hole and putting a carabiner on there. You could use pop rivets and a piece of leather. You could just make something out of duct tape, like wrap duct tape around the top and the bottom and make a handle completely out of duct tape and maybe cardboard. Whatever you want to do basically for your handle, just make sure that it's nice and secure. So I'm actually going to bolt this onto here so I know it's nice and secure. However, like I said, get creative with it, have fun with it. Do whatever you think your character would do if they were trying to make this mug, or do whatever fits your aesthetic of your character. So that leather strap, the carabiner, this handle, or you can do a combination, do a couple handles, you know, whatever you want to do on it. Maybe have a built-in frog on it so that you can hang it from your belt. Whatever you want to do. Another cool thing we can do with this rust is go ahead and get it on some clothing. So we're going to go ahead and just take our solution, we're going to spray it on here, spray it down with our solution. And what it'll do is it'll actually make a nice rust ring on there. Now, if you saw my Wasteland radio project, then you know what these little rings look like. Now give the appearance as though, you know, they had maybe been sitting on a shelf with a can on them, or, you know, sitting somewhere. And you could also get a old pair of pliers or like an old wrench or something laid on there, spray it down, so in that way you have like a rusty wrench pattern or outline on your clothes, and it'll come out pretty cool. You can see even from it just sitting on there for a second that we already have, you know, a rusty ring on here, and that's great. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to spray it down real good. And I'm just going to let it sit on there overnight till it dries, and then that way we know it'll be really nice and ground in, and it's going to leave a really cool effect. So something cool you can do, and it'll wash out, but it should never really completely wash out. Okay, so after a few days, this can's starting to not look too bad. But what I'm going to do is, rather than wait on this, I'm going to go ahead and use a can that I'd already done previously that doesn't have the caution tape on it, and show you how to attach the handle to these things. Alright, so this is a can I had rusted before that we're going to go ahead and use. I didn't rust the bottom of it a whole lot purposely because I was going to put a picture on the bottom of here, or a patch on the bottom of here or something, you know, that was somewhat ignorant or rude, so every time you tilt it up to take a drink, people would see, like, you know, someone flicking them off or something. But I just didn't get around to that yet. But we're going to attach the handle to this anyway. So I got this awesome old handle. Now, if you can find one that fits on your cup, that would be great. This one's actually a little bit long, but you know what? In the Wasteland, things aren't going to be perfect, so we're going to work with this. Now, in this particular scenario, I actually have a drill press. So what I did was I went over and actually just drilled more holes in this. So now, when I go to mount this, I will actually have 3 holes holding on. It will just be this top one that's sort of, you know, hanging about. Now, what I could do is I could cut this off or grind this off, or I could do something else with it. I think in this particular scenario, I think I'm going to try to do something else with it because I want this to still be on there. Okay, so you're going to put this on here. You're going to make sure you set it flat so that you know this thing will sit, because you don't want to attach it too high so it's wonky. So make sure that it's stable. Measure twice, cut once, right? Just because we're in the wasteland doesn't mean we have to be savages. I'm going to put this on the seam so it hides that. Even though the seam is very well concealed on this piece, we're just going to completely conceal it up here. And then you'll get a marker or something, stick it down the hole, make a mark on here so you know where to drill. Then, from there, it's pretty simple. You just go drill yourself a hole where your pilot marks are. Make sure you're using the correct size drill bit. You don't want any surprises. Okay, once you have your holes drilled, you can go ahead and start to attach your handle. Now, you should use stainless steel hardware. It's just a little bit more expensive, but this is obviously probably going to be getting moist or wet at some point in time, so stainless steel is not going to rust on you. However, if you want it to sort of match the aesthetic, then get something that will rust. What's going to happen is we'll probably have to come back and paint these because they're stainless, but that's fine. That's not a big deal. We can paint them up, or what I will probably do is use rub and buff on them to make them look metallic. And then when we're all done, we'll spray clear over this whole thing. Now, you're going to want to use a washer on the inside because this is still just a tin can and it'll rip right through. So use a washer. Now, if you have a small enough hand to get down in there, that's cool. Good for you. You have baby hands. For someone like me, I'm going to have to use some needle nose pliers. And then all I'm going to do is just put the hardware down inside, poke it through the hole, and then from there we can just mount this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick and then show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay, and here's our finished product, our Wasteland mug. Ready for some shine. So what I did was I found some acorn nuts. I actually took off an old shield I had, so I used those instead of regular hex nuts. Now inside I used screws because I had them laying around, but if you're buying stuff for this project and not salvaging stuff or scrounging stuff up, get hex bolts and use those instead, because you'll be able to put a wrench in there and hold it on while you tighten it. Having screws in there is a real pain in the butt to get this thing tight. I would suggest using Loctite on these. Blue Loctite should be fine. If you don't know what Loctite is, you can buy it at Walmart, Home Depot, auto parts stores, whatever. You just put it on the nut and that stops it from unscrewing itself. So get yourself some of that, put it on here. Make sure these don't stick out too far, and you're going to want to have the flat ends on the inside. Okay, you don't want stuff sticking out on the inside. And on this, it actually worked out great that this handle was a little bit too big because I have an extra hole on top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a keychain ring or something on there and use that to actually hang this off my belt. So instead of having to have a frog or something to hold this, I mean, I could always have a frog also, but I can just put that keychain loop on there, or a carabiner or whatever, and that's how I can hold this. So it ended up working out great for me. Now, after this, we'll go ahead and spray it with some clear or shellac or whatever you want to put on here, basically to lock this rust in. Now, the thing you're going to say to me is, well, that's great, Max. How the fuck am I supposed to drink out of this without needing a tetanus shot? Well, this is a mug, but you don't actually drink out of this. What this is more like a can cozy. See how that fits right in there? Now, you want to drink, you can just drink out of the can, and you don't actually have to touch this. Now, the bigger the soup can you start with, then the larger the can you can conceal inside. Now, this isn't great because the top of this can sticks out, but this is probably pretty good because this way your mouth is nowhere near this rust. You can take your drink and not have to worry about getting any of this in your mouth. Now, if you seal this with an epoxy or something, then none of that will matter anyways. You'll be fine because you won't be touching the rust. But don't use it just like this. Unless it's just for looks, don't use it just like this because I don't want anyone getting sick or injured. not all these cans are sharp on the inside, but a lot of them are very sharp. So if your can is sharp, you're probably going to want to roll your edges, and you can just use pliers to do that and just crimp around the edges and roll it over. If you're able to get one that's not sharp, like the ones that have the pop tops, that's probably your better way to go. Now, the reason we don't drink right out of this, and even if we put epoxy and stuff in it, is I'm not a big fan of like chemicals and stuff like that. I would rather just have the stuff be in the can that it comes in initially, and then just have it be like this. That way you're still concealing the can mostly. If it's a dark colored can, probably no one's going to notice, and you can drink it and it still looks cool. I'll go ahead and finish up that one with the caution tape on. I also have a few more of these I'm working on that are different sizes and styles. But for right now, I just wanted to make sure that I got one done so you could see a good example of how to make these. And like I said, you can take this project and make it your own by doing other things. You can use like just a leather strap on here with just 2 bolts to hold it on instead of an elaborate metal handle like this. You could use paracord. You could wrap paracord or something around it and use a strap. And as I mentioned, you could even use like duct tape or whatever you want to do to make the handle that is unique to your character. I happen to like the aesthetic of this, so that's what I'm going with. And if you decide to make one, I hope it works out good for you. Just be safe if you're using it to actually drink out of, and make sure that you're not getting any rust in your mouth. And if you use an epoxy or some sort of sealer on this, make sure that's something that's safe to come in contact, you know, with your lips in case you actually do touch it. Don't use anything poison. Of course, this is all for entertainment and educational purposes, so never make this at home. And if you do, that's on you. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please click like. Please subscribe, tell your friends about the channel. If you want to get updates whenever I post my new videos, which is every week, go ahead and click the little bell next to the subscribe button. And yeah, be sure to stay tuned, because I have plenty more projects coming that are post-apocalyptic in nature and medieval fantasy in nature and all other genres. And like I said, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you find it helpful. Until next time, adventure on. I'm Max Sterling, and this is my channel. I work here with my old man and my son, Big Hoss. Everything in here has a story and a price. One thing I've learned after 21 years is that you never know what is going to come through that door.